What are your thoughts on quiet quitting, acting your wage? Quiet quitting, shitty made-up term by companies, to guilt their workers into doing a bunch of free shit they are not being paid for. Acting your wage, I get the idea behind it, but I'm not sure it needs a term. FFS, just do what you are being paid for and keep it at that. We gotta stop using this term some bootlicker in HR came up with for doing your damn job. Regardless of anyone's political leanings, I'm sure we can all agree that, if you want more, you pay for more. I support it. If you're underpaid, then you shouldn't overwork yourself for someone that won't give you a good wage. You mean doing the correct amount of work you're being paid for? Sounds like not slavery. I think the pandemic really reset people's priorities. A lot of people were working from home, or unemployed, and spent time with their families, or relaxing, or on self-improvement. After a couple years of that, we all realized that maybe working those extra hours every day isn't that important. Their jobs kept going on, even though they were putting less effort into them. I've noticed a big change at my office. If I stay until 5:30, there's only a couple cars left in the parking lot. It used to be busy there until 6 or 7 most days, and the place is pretty empty on Fridays. Everyone is working from home. People seem to value their personal time a lot more, and I think it's a good thing. Work to live, don't live to work. Why should an employer get more than they pay for? They never willingly pay more than they agree to. Why should you work more than you agreed to? As someone who used to bust my ass and bend over backwards, I stopped. Because I was laid off permanently while all the new guys got to keep their jobs, because they were cheaper, and all the promotions I've worked my ass off for were all given to outside hires with no experience. So now I look at it as, why bother trying? There's literally no incentive to try. Raises aren't different for people who work harder anymore. It's all based on how long you're with the company. It's funny to me how people think this is a new thing. The term for it is new, but people everywhere have always been doing it. Agreed. Quiet quitting is one of the dumbest things I have ever heard. You do the job you were hired to do. If you decide you want to do more, that's your choice. If not, it shouldn't matter. If the organization you work for can't make good decisions, then that isn't your fault. Bullshit corporate term for just doing your job. Take my energy, pay peanuts, get monkeys. Gold. I resent the term quiet quitting, as a person who is protective of their time outside office hours. This doesn't make me a bad employee, it makes me a better one. I'm very good at my job, and I'm able to do it better than some in fewer hours, and I don't suffer from burnout because I make sure I get time to switch off. Measure my performance on the work I do, not the time I'm available. This term really is corporations responding to the mass realization that they can't bully and trick one person into doing two people's jobs anymore. That's actually the reason I left my last job. My manager was incompetent, and I often found myself doing his job for him, while he raked in the bucks. He got fired and I was like, hey, I already know how to do his job basically, why don't we train me to do the stuff I'd how to do and bump me up? They said they would give me a trial run. I aced the trial run, and they came with some bullshit about how it's too soon for me to be a manager, because I just started there a few months prior. So I left. Did this for Walmart all the time. Started out as a cashier. Started doing backup CSM, basically still a cashier, just doing a customer service manager's job. Became a CSM finally after 6 months, by busting my ass off. At one point I was one of 2 CSMs on the front end, when there should have been 6 to 8. Busted my ass for years because turnover is high, then applied for a higher management position. Got passed over for an 18-year-old kid, who was there for the store remodel. His first job ever. Found out his mommy and daddy worked at the home office. Same kid got to move up to assistant manager training within 2 years. We would have these yearly surveys, and one of the questions basically asked if moving up in the company was based on work ethic or by who you know. Every time after that I'd answer by who you know. This was at store number 1 near the home office itself. I worked at a college bookstore for a few years, making minimum wage. One of our textbook leads left, and the manager called me into his office, saying he'd like me to take over some of his responsibilities. I asked if it came with a new title and pay raise and he said no, so I politely declined. He was shocked and kept pushing, but I told him that I wasn't doing the work of a textbook lead while making the same amount of money as someone who started working a week ago. Has anyone here ever worked somewhere, had a supervisor quit, then had to do the supervisor's job, but while being told they can't actually make you officially the supervisor yet, just so they don't have to give you a pay rise? I've known several people who have had this happen to them, and they get strung along with the promise that eventually they will have the title and pay rise. No one should fall for it. Added to avoid angry mods, yes. I wholeheartedly support silent quitting and acting your wage. The phrase "you get what you pay for" applies to employers too. They shouldn't expect to get premium production at a discount. I think the idea is that these days, people actually realize the rate of pay is bullshit, and your employer is not looking out for you, so the other guy with the good WLD isn't taking 20, and if he does we should mock him. And then they hire the other applicant that does a good $20 per hour weld. It's like the old story of the welder at a job interview for a position that pays $20, $40 per hour. They have the welder do 2 test welds to show their skill. One is a perfect weld, the other is a sloppy mess. The interviewer asks why they did so bad on the second weld, and is told that's the $20 per hour weld, the other is my $40 per hour weld. If you pay me $10 you'll get a $10 employee. I would have gone straight to the labor board as soon as I saw that shit. If they did that to you, they're almost certainly doing it to others, who might not stick up for themselves. Yes, they changed it back cause they didn't want to deal with the labor board. I stayed at the job cause I actually enjoyed the work while I was in school. It was a retirement home. Someone changing my clock out time, like that would set me off. Just reading about it made me feel rage. Did they change it back? Did you stay at that job? Helpful. I've been doing this for years lol. Just common sense to me. I do what I get paid to do. I do my hours, no more no less. If I have to work overtime I'm claiming every single millisecond of it. It's a job. Not my life. Had a situation once, where someone called in sick, and no one could come in to replace them. Which is not the end of the world. Had to stay 30 minutes past my scheduled time to ensure everything was done, so I put that on my timesheet. When I came in the next day, I saw someone scratched out my 30 minutes extra, and put in my normal finish time. Obviously that pissed me off, so I went to the boss and asked what the fuck was this. They said they don't pay overtime, and other shit. So I said, well, here's what's gonna happen. Either you pay me for the extra time or I'll go straight to the Department of Labor and file a complaint. Don't think they expected a 20-year-old, at the time, to stick up for themselves. They quickly forget all that extra shit you did as soon as you make a mistake. It's not worth it, you end up wasting the effort, with nothing to show for it. This advice is key. Where I work we are chronically short-staffed, and tasks that you volunteer for tend to become permanent. I learned a long time ago that you get the same 2.5% raise as everyone else regardless. Heard the same thing lol. Friend of mine made it to E6 on his first enlistment, took me aside when I was late teens and shook his head because he saw me working late to impress my boss. Just said moods, never volunteer. I never got so much as a thank you for all those extra hours I worked, and only years later did I realize how right my friend was. In fact, I was only rewarded with more work in hindsight. Take my power. I was in the army when a colonel told me to act my pay grade. Stop doing extra, and do what my rank was assigned without the bows and ribbons. Take my lunch, quit working low it. I was worried about things that could wait until the next day. Work your wage, yo! This advice is key. Where I work we are chronically short-staffed, and tasks that you volunteer for tend to become permanent. I learned a long time ago that you get the same 2.5% raise as everyone else regardless.